interaction. My then director of sales showed us a video called Thoughts Become Things. For me, my process of setting goals has always been very simple.
Because when you set up your goals and when you achieve your goals, I'm sure you had some obstacles on the way. I know that obstacles are part of our journey to success. Life is short and we need to enjoy and take the opportunity to work towards our goals and dreams in any moment. I think COVID was one of the good examples of how we can learn to be resilient, how we can learn how to adapt to changes. So how do you balance your professional and personal life?
Since I was a kid, I have been one of the biggest practitioners of what the Italians call dulce far niente.
What advice would you give it to your younger self?
I would tell my younger self to not be so hard on myself. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not reach your goals. It's all a part of the journey, and in the long run, things always happen for a reason. Be kind to yourself, actually.
Now this is the fun part of our episode, unless you think that it's been fun already, but
It's been a lot of fun, Altan. Trust me, it has been.
Greetings from Vancouver, Canada. I'm very excited to have the great pleasure and honor to introduce you my guest and my friend Saurabh Gambhir. Saurabh, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you so much, Altan. Glad we are doing this. So thank you once again for inviting me. I am absolutely privileged and I'm looking forward to having a wonderful conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Saurabh. I would like to start with your journey to success. You have a very inspirational and motivational career. I would like you to talk about a little bit of your background. I would like to start with the question of what were some of the key moments that shaped your career?
Thank you, Anton. Thank you for that question. My name is Saurabh Gambhir and I am the Director of Business Development at the Surrey Hotel and Motel Association. I've known Altan through our common group, which is one of the most prestigious hospitality clubs on the planet, which is called. Altan is the past president and I've had the honor and the privilege of working with him since the last 1 year since I joined the club. Altan, in fact, was the one who presented me with my membership and I will always remember that day so very fondly. Thank you once again for that, Altan. To answer your question about my journey, that's something I think of very fondly, and there have been a few key moments over the years that have so far defined my career. It began with my decision of choosing the hospitality industry, which both you and I have had the pleasure and the honor of working in for the last so many years. I decided to pursue my bachelor's in hotel management while growing up in India, and that proved to be one of the key moments of my life. While pursuing my bachelor's, I was all set to be working in the hospitality world. Little did I know my life was about to change once again when I got a scholarship to go to France for my master's.
Wow.
Never had I ever imagined that I would be able to go abroad to a foreign country for my master's, let alone a place like France, which, as we all know, is one of the pioneers when it comes to hospitality and the culinary scene. That opportunity came my way. I was so thankful for it, and I would like to share I had also worked very hard for that opportunity. I was in fact one of the 6 students from all over India to get that scholarship, and it was a fully paid scholarship, and to this day I think it was the most defining moment of my life. I was so thankful for it. I had the opportunity to not only study but also work in France, meet people from all over the world, make friends, learn new languages, eat all the food, get accustomed to drinking French wine, and the journey began. I was also lucky to have traveled a fair bit in Europe at that young age. I was all of 21 at that time, and that's something I look back on very, very fondly. While I was working in France, I got the opportunity to get a job contract to work in the UK, in Glasgow, with a small luxury hotel, and that was the next stepping stone in my career. And then over the years, I've had the privilege of working with some of the finest hospitality brands on the planet, initially in operations and then sales. Another defining moment would be when I got to be a young director of global sales with one of my previous organizations, the Carlson Residor Hotel Group, which is now renamed to Radisson Hotel Group. I was the director of global sales for them while being in India and taking care of a portfolio of 78 hotels in South Asia for them.
Wow. I would like to pause a little bit, Saurabh, because you have such a inspiring story and career for all the viewers. And I know that I have a lot of students, and I know that I have a lot of young professionals who are watching us right now. And I think there are some key moments that I would like to talk about, because first, you were only 21 and you were one of the 6 students in the entire country of India, which was supposed to be the second largest country in the world. So you can do the math.
I have a full disclosure on that. When I say all students from all over India, all the hospitality schools that were run by the Ministry of Tourism, which was about 27 hospitality schools at that time, on an average about 150 students in each hospitality school. So if you do the math,
yes,
amongst 4,000 hospitality students.
So there are certain things that we need to pay attention to in your story, because yes, you are being very humble by talking about your success, but I think there is more to it there. For instance, in order for you to go to France, you became one of the 6 students in the entire tourism population in India to be able to go to France. So in order to be one of the 6 students, you had to work very hard, you had to be successful at what you do. You went to France. And I can see that you are very excited about France when you talk about France, and also the hospitality. So I understand that hospitality changed your career. I also love hospitality, so I understand how good it is to work in the hospitality industry. So you moved to France, and what kind of program was it? Was it a master's program?
That is correct. So this was a master's in hospitality and tourism management, which was absolutely in line what I had done in my bachelor's. So it turned out to be a natural progression of what I had been doing for the previous 3 years in India.
So you won the scholarship for master program in France.
That's correct.
Wow. Sorry, it's not that because you are my guest speaker, but that's amazing. So you had to go to another country all the way from India, and it was free. And of course you deserved it. That's one of the key moments that shaped your career. And then you got a job offer, and then you moved to England, working for one of the largest hotel luxury brands.
That's
managing
correct.
76 hotels.
That was later in my career, but when I got the opportunity to move to the UK, Scotland, Glasgow, it was a small luxury hotel. In fact, it used to be a hospital during the Second World War. And as you know, with hotels, each hotel has its own unique story, especially boutique hotels. And that was one of them in the countryside of Glasgow. Beautiful property, 52 keys, a golf resort in the making at that time, a stream passing by overlooking the mountains, an absolutely picturesque location, as beautiful as it gets for a hotel's location. I got that job opportunity, and then I moved back to India, and that's where I built a career for myself. I moved back initially in operations. That's what I was doing, front office and food and beverage operations. And then I had an affinity. I was always curious about the sales and marketing vertical of a hotel's operations, and I got an opportunity to move internally. And then since then, I was lucky enough to have worked with some of the finest brands. But yes, definitely, like you mentioned, to this day, whenever I'm talking about France, my eyes light up, and I become that 21-year-old who went there, young, naive, but also very excited at the same time. Thinking about the opportunities that lying ahead of me. And
one of the good things about traveling abroad is that you can also travel neighboring countries, which you did in Europe, right? Because all the countries are kind of close to each other. So I can see that you had enjoy your time in Europe.
I definitely did, and again, very thankful for the opportunity, because like you said, it does become slightly easier when you're living in one of the European countries to travel throughout the Schengen or the European Union. And I would like to believe I made the most of it. Looking back now, of course, I think I could have covered even more, but I'm still very thankful of the opportunities we got, not only traveling to other parts of Europe, but also traveling within France, because as we know, France to this day remains one of the most visited countries on the planet. The fact that I got the opportunity to travel across the length and the breadth of the country, that's something that is very satisfying and it look natural as well, right? Yeah.
Say?
That will also make it look natural.
Yes.
It's a real process, Yeah.
So Saurabh, I would like to ask you, what are the top 3 strategies that you would recommend to someone who wants to achieve a similar career success?
That's an interesting one. Top 3 strategies. I think the first and foremost that I would like to start with, and this might sound like a cliche, but it is not a cliche because it will always hold true, is to work hard. There is absolutely no alternate to working hard in any walk of life, in any industry, but especially our industry. It could be demanding in the beginning, and yet it does become rewarding in the long run. So as long as we keep at it, as long as we continue doing what we all love doing, the rewards will follow. But yeah, absolutely work hard. The other thing that has worked well for me is to have goals and be ambitious. I think I could say this about myself. I was always ambitious and driven since I was a kid. Since my school days, I always had the drive to achieve and always aim for the highest possible slab or the highest possible goal. But that was just me. But in general, as long as we have the drive to achieve something and have a goal, we keep on striving towards achieving it, no matter how long it takes. It could take a month, it could take 2 years, but as long as we have that goal and that ambition and drive to achieve it, I think it would always hold us in good stead. And lastly, something that has worked very well for me is the law of attraction.
What do you mean?
Great question. So when I was towards the beginning of my career, my first sales job, I remembered having a weekly team meeting, and my then director of sales showed us a video called Thoughts Become Things. To this day, I have not forgotten that video, and I had no clue about the law of attraction per se at that time, but what that essentially meant was, when you want something so badly that you keep on thinking about it, analyzing it, and putting it out there in the universe will find a way to make it work for you as long as you are willing to make the effort. And I can say this with utmost conviction, it has worked for me throughout my life since I was a kid, even before I knew about the law of attraction or that actual term. For me, if I wanted something, I would keep on thinking about it in my head. I have to confess, I sometimes become overly obsessed with things, and that's not something I would recommend to everybody. And yet, just visualizing it in your head, if it's about, the universe is based on energy, we get what we give. If we put the energy out in the universe thinking, this is what I want and this will happen, it's mystic, but things happen. Obviously, we have to work towards it. I can't just dream of something and wake up the next day and expect, to achieve it.
These are great points, Saurabh. Thank you so much. But I think you talked about a lot of things. I think what I understood from your statements is that in order to achieve something, first of all, we need to have goals, right? Because if we don't know where we are going, if we don't know what we are targeting, how can we work hard towards that goal? So I think what you are trying to say is you always had specific goals, and you always had the motivation, you always kept yourself motivated to work towards your goals, and you work very hard to achieve it regarding all the obstacles that you had. I think that sounds amazing, because I think with this formula you can achieve anything in life, because everything is possible. And you talked about law of attraction. Law of attraction is, I think my understanding is, it's also to do with motivation, because if you are motivated about something, then you will put your ideas in the universe, and willing to achieve, willing to be best, and then the success will find you.
You've summed it up perfectly, Altan. Thank you for simplifying the process for our viewers.
So speaking of goals, I know that anyone can have any goals, but I also do know that it is important to have smart goals. So I would like to ask you, how do you set and achieve your goals? Can you walk us through the process?
Absolutely, Altan, and thank you for asking that question, because you emphasized on something which is making me smile, is smart goals. Over the years, I talked about being ambitious and driven, but at times I have been overly ambitious, and I've set goals for myself which, at least back in the day, might have been slightly harder to achieve. Being smart goals is being realistic, which is something that is achievable, something that is tangible. For me, my process of setting goals has always been very simple. I'm not sure if this might make sense to everybody, but allow me to explain it. What has worked for me is I set goals very moment I achieve one of them. For example,
Okay,
the
that's
first-
interesting.
yeah, and I'll give you an example. When I began my career, like everybody else, I was driven, passionate about the industry, young as well, and looking around myself, my team, when somebody gets an internal promotion, that's a validation and acknowledgement of their efforts by the organization, by the team. That's something I always wanted. Thanks to the opportunities I received in my life, I traveled a lot, especially during the beginning of my career, which also meant I moved around a lot. So I did not necessarily have the opportunity to spend a long enough time in an organization to get that internal promotion. So one of my organizations, it was my second sales job, still in India at that time, a fabulous hotel, but a slightly harder sell. It was a lot of hard work because it was a new property on the outskirts of the city, so it was not as established as some of the city center hotels. So there was a lot of attrition in that property, especially in the sales and marketing department. I promised myself to stick around and put myself in a position where I could get the internal promotion. Exactly a year after joining that property, I got my first internal promotion. And I remember going out that evening, celebrating with some of my closest friends, but rather than letting that moment sink in, I actually set out my next goal. And I said this to one of my closest friends, and I still remember it to this day. So I was an assistant sales manager, I became a sales manager, and I told my friend, he asked me what next. I was like, in the next 3 years, I want to become a director of sales. He was not from the industry, but he asked me a really specific question, and that made a lot of sense. He was like, well, do you think that's achievable, or are you being overly ambitious about that goal? It might sound like I'm being overly ambitious at this point in time, but I want to test myself. And from the very next day onwards, I started working towards it. It took me 3.5 years, but I ended up being there. I'm not going to talk about the process because there were days when I absolutely drove myself nuts, thinking and overthinking and overanalyzing everything. But for me, the goal setting process starts when you achieve one of your smaller goals, and that's what works for me.
You explain it perfectly, and every time you make a statement, it makes me think about how do I achieve my goals and how do I set my goals. 100% sure that a lot of people will get the benefit of your experiences and your knowledge. You talked about the importance of setting up smart goals. You talked about your goal being specific. You wanted to be the sales manager, and then you set up your next goal, which was being a director of sales, and you actually put a deadline, because this deadline kept you motivated towards your goals, and you work hard towards your new goal. Because if you don't set up the next step, you won't have the motivation, you won't have the courage to work towards. Your goal was measurable, your goal was achievable, and you achieved your goal. Your story is inspiring, and you achieved what you wanted to achieve, and that's what matters at the end of the day.
Thank you, Altan.
So we talked about top 3 strategies, we talked about how to set up goals, and how to achieve goals. So now let's talk about a little bit of the obstacles. Because when you set up your goals and when you achieve your goals, I'm sure you had some obstacles on the way. My question to you is, what has been the biggest obstacle in your career and what did you learn from it? How did you overcome it?
I can definitely say I've had my fair share of obstacles over the years, and yet with each one of them, I learned so much that I'm very thankful for them. So I've talked about my journey, being able to go to France for a master's and then being able to get a job contract in the UK at a very young age. So my first biggest obstacle in my career was after achieving those highs, if I could put it that way, of going to France on a scholarship, being able to live in the south of France, travel all over Europe, go to the UK, and thinking that my career is taking off and my flight will never ever land. I would just touch the skies, which I felt like it that way, and yet life could be a great leveler. I went back to India from the UK, and despite having a bachelor's and a master's degree in the hospitality industry, having worked in 3 countries all by the age of 22, I got a reality check. I went back to India. I literally had to start from scratch, work 14-hour days, making a fraction of the money I was making in France or the UK. And I just could not answer my own questions. Why is this happening to me? Why, especially after experiencing those highs, why do I have to go through these obstacles? For example, my goal was to move to sales. It took me a year to move to sales and marketing in a hotel. I always felt I had the qualification and the skill set to do it, and yet it took me the longest time. I can't even remember how many organizations I applied to and how many interviews I had to appear for, to the extent that working in operations, as you would understand very well, especially at the concierge, I would work morning, afternoon, and night shifts. I remember working 14-hour night shifts and going for an interview the very next morning, taking about 5 or 6 hours start to finish, coming back home, sleeping for 2 hours, and then showing up at work again and still not getting the job. That was one of my biggest obstacles at that time. And I remember promising myself that I will pounce upon the first opportunity that will come my way, which eventually came. It meant that I have to move from New Delhi to Goa. I had never even been to Goa. And yet I said yes to that opportunity because I had worked so hard for it. That was my first obstacle. That was definitely very humbling, to say the least.
I would like to say that this is a great example, and I can't imagine how you felt during that process, because being one of the 6 students who won the master's scholarship in France and living in different countries, having the top peak of your career in those countries, which is an honor and privilege, and it's a great experience. And after going through that success, you had to go back to India, start from scratch, and you had to work long hours, you had to work very hard, and basically go back to the process of setting up your goals again, going through obstacles again. I think the key in your obstacle is resilience. You have shown resilience, you have shown determination, you have shown patience. You became successful once again and you started from scratch. I know that obstacles are part of our journey to success. We all have obstacles in life. I also had some obstacles in my journey to success. I think one of the great examples of an obstacle is probably the same for everyone, but COVID times. Pre-COVID, I was at the peak of my career. I was working for one of the large hotel chains that I have always wanted to work for, as being the regional sales manager, traveling, working from home at the same time. It was my dream job, right? And all of a sudden, I started hearing news about COVID. To be honest, we didn't know what was COVID at that time. And I was trying to figure out, what is COVID? What's going on? And then all of a sudden, all the reservations started going down, and we started hearing initial layoffs in the industry, and then every day we started hearing about people who was laid off from their jobs, and without thinking it will impact us as well, because as you said, when you are in the peak of your career, you don't think about obstacles again, because as a human being we are naturally thinking about we will never have obstacles again because we already overcame obstacles. I also had the same thought process because it was really challenging for me to go that far. I never thought that I was going to have a serious obstacle again after that point, because my idea was, okay, I can get retired now in this job because I love my job. And all of a sudden I received that phone call, right, that I was laid off. I had no plan B because I was not prepared to lose my dream job. I had to start from scratch. I had to make some changes in my career to go back to the level where I was pre-COVID times, which took a couple of years. I'm sure you also had some challenges during COVID times, but I think that was my biggest obstacle.
Thank you for sharing your story, Altan, and I can completely relate to what you must have gone through, because I was also going to talk about what probably has been my biggest obstacle so far in my entire life was the pandemic. Like you said, we all never even saw it coming. Doing the jobs that we love doing, jobs that brought us joy, a lot of travel, other perks, but more importantly, the connection in this industry, which we all are so passionate about and so thankful for. Suddenly, the in-person connection was a no-go because all meetings, all events were cancelled. People were just thinking of just surviving somehow the pandemic without getting affected by it. And then, just like you said, every day you would see something in the news or get an email or talk to a colleague about layoffs happening at one organization or the other, and all you did was just hope that it does not happen to you. And I was in a very similar position. I was laid off from what was at that time my dream job, and it just hit me so hard because I did not know of anything else apart from hospitality, and we did not have a clue when would we rebound or if we would ever make it to the other side. So that was one of the hardest phases of my life. Having said that though, in a way I am also very thankful for that obstacle, because it was a pivotal moment in my life, and I can share with you and our viewers. Now I'm actually thankful for it because it changed my life for the better. Once I was laid off, I had all the time in the world. I had two options: either to sulk about this or make a positive change in my life. And I used that time to change my lifestyle completely, start working towards my fitness, my mental health, spending a lot of time in nature, which I always loved, but now because I had the time, I could spend more time in nature. I started going camping practically every weekend. I also picked up skiing the first winter of COVID, which has been life-changing for me. So while the obstacle hit me really hard the first few weeks, in a way I'm thankful for it now, because it helped me reset my life, reevaluate everything, and also appreciate things that I think a lot of us took for granted, including our health. That's one thing I realized during the pandemic. Everything else will fall in place as long as we are healthy. I also had the experience of losing a couple of friends to the pandemic, to COVID, which hit me really hard, and that gave me even more perspective that all that matters is your health and your loved ones, and the rest would fall in place.
That's an amazing statement. I feel like some of your statements can be a video by itself.
You're just very kind, Altan.
You talked about overcoming obstacles. As human beings, I feel like we take things granted, as you said. And I think COVID was one of the opportunities for human beings to realize that we should not take anything granted in life, because we do not know what may happen in the next 5 minutes. This is not just to give people an anxiety, or I don't want people to get nervous, by my statement, but just to talk about life is short and we need to enjoy and take the opportunity to work towards our goals and dreams in any moment. I think COVID was one of the good examples of how we can learn to be resilient, how we can learn how to adapt to changes, because post-COVID times, I had to make some career changes. If COVID didn't happen, I wish it didn't happen, because we also lost a lot of people. And I think that's one of the reasons why we learned that we need to be grateful, because a lot of people lost their loved ones and their lives. I also lost some family members during COVID time, and we are alive. So we are one of the lucky people that we are alive, and we had the opportunity to make those changes, learn from the obstacles, and move to the next chapter of our lives. Saurabh, I would like to talk about leadership and management. What qualities do you believe that are essential for leadership?
See, leadership is such an intriguing topic, Altan, because there is so much to it. And if you talk to some of the most successful leaders across industries, they will all have slightly different takes on it, because leadership, I believe, is also a reflection of an individual's personality. But some of the traits that most leaders would agree about, at least for me, would be the following. For me, when you talk about leadership, the first thing that comes to my mind is being a team player. You cannot expect to be a good leader if you see yourself detached from the team. At times, I completely understand you might have to do it, but the most successful leaders, at least the ones that I have drawn inspiration from, are the ones who've been team players. They're leaders, definitely, yes, when you have the designation, but they've stayed within the team while leading them, which essentially means being empathetic. Empathy, I think, is a trait that is essential to leadership, in my belief, in any case. You've got to be compassionate as a human being in general, not just as a leader. But if you have that trait, it will always hold you in good stead. One thing I learned over the years as a leader, you have to be assertive at times, on most occasions.
That's amazing. What you said is, I think, is very important, Saurabh. You talked about being a team player. And I know also from my experiences that I have come across some leaders that were detached from their teams. They were spending a lot of time in their offices without knowing what their teams were going through. In certain leaders, this is what they have gone through when they were a manager. So for some reason, they're, I think, psychologically thinking that, okay, now I need to do the same to my managers. I'm not sure if it's intentionally or unintentionally, but of course, success doesn't happen. You have high turnovers in the team because they feel like they are not being supported by their managers, directors, executive leaders. There's the attachment between the leaders and their teams, and they leave the job. Mm-hmm. And then the new person comes in, you need to train that person again, and that person leaves again. So as a company, you are actually constantly hiring and spending money on all the sources to train people rather than retaining what you have, and success doesn't happen. I agree with you. Working with a leader who understands about their team is a privilege, and I'm sure we all have had people in our lives that inspire us and help us to come this far because we were very inspired of their leadership.
That's such a good point that you make, Altan.
So we talked about a lot of work stuff. Now let's talk about some personal stuff. I think one of the most important things in life is work and life balance. In my opinion, I can't explain how important it is to have a work and life balance. We talked about goals, we talked about achieving goals, smart goals, ambition, obstacles in life. Now I would like to talk about work and life balance. So how do you balance your professional and personal life? Can you share some tips with us?
Definitely, and that's something. So when you're asking that question, it brought a smile to my face. I don't know if you notice it because I feel blessed, Altan. That's something that comes to me naturally. Since I was a kid, I have been one of the biggest practitioners of what the Italians call dulce far niente, which is the sweetness of doing nothing. And I've been practicing it even before I knew the Italian term, because somehow I would always find a way to finish the task at hand, either as a kid at school or even as a young professional, and then completely switch off and detach and do things that bring me joy. If that meant going out and playing sports as a kid, I would find a way to do that. But especially in this day and age when we are so connected all the time, which I think our previous generations did not have to go through, cell phones, emails, and all the connectivity, social media in this day and age for that matter. So I think it's even more essential in the times that we live in to have that work-life balance. Like I said, I feel blessed in that sense because it's been a no-brainer to me. For me, I will find the easiest part to finish my work and then just go about doing my things that give me joy, which is either just spending some time with my loved ones, spending time out in the nature, or just doing nothing at all.
So you really enjoy doing nothing in your free times. I think sometimes that's what we need, right? Because we constantly do things in life, right? We go to work and we do a lot of things there, checking emails, meetings, everything that we're supposed to do. We go home, as you said, I think that's one of the negative impacts of the technology in our lives, that even though when we go home, we are struggling to get detached from social media, from phones, from computers, because we are constantly thinking about doing things. I think when you talked about setting up goals, and now we are talking about work and life balance, so I understand that yes, it is important to work hard to achieve goals, but also it is important to have a good mental health so you can achieve your goals, right?
Absolutely, and you hit the nail on the head, Altan. In fact, I will go to the extent of saying that it's important to draw boundaries. Otherwise, in this day and age, we get so caught up and the lines get so blurred that before we realize, we go down that rabbit hole. So some of the things that I began doing, and many years ago, was to stop reaching out for my phone after a certain time in the evening, to the extent that I would turn off my Wi-Fi or my data, and I will never ever reach out for my phone first thing in the morning unless I've gone through my morning routine, which is a little workout, a cup of coffee, just reassessing my previous day, whatever process we all have as individuals. We understand work's important, but so is our mental health. My phone is never switched off. Especially the industry that we work in, we understand we at times need to be available around the clock, quite literally, and yet that's what the phone is for. If something goes wrong, then you can always be reached. I also try to spend a lot of time in nature, and following a schedule helps, but I have to confess it took me the longest time to be that disciplined in life. But in fact, I'm smiling about this because some of my friends call me too structured now because I have to get up at a certain time in the morning, do a quick workout, have my cup of coffee. If I don't go through that routine, I'm not the same person that you're meeting today. But that's a structure that I enjoy. I absolutely enjoy, and that has worked well for me in terms of drawing those boundaries and switching off.
That's amazing. I think it's not a bad thing to be structured because we only have so much time to live in a day. We only have 24-hour days. Know that successful people, CEOs and all other executives, they also sleep less to do more. So that's why in order to do that, you need to structure your day to be planned so you can do more and enjoy the things more. I think you are doing perfectly by doing your exercises, spending time in the nature, especially being disconnected from your emails and phone is, I think, a great skill because I think a lot of people are struggling to do that. I also struggled in the past, even though when I go home, I will still be wondering, okay, if I receive the response from my customer or certain client, if I make the deal or not, being in sales, you kind of hyper, but you realize, again, life is short and we can only do so much in 24 hours.
Absolutely. And if I may add, you talked about sleep, Altan. I think for me, that's the most important part of my day. I'm actually impressed when I hear someone talk about how they can sleep for only 4 or 5 hours a day and maximize that time and do a lot of productive things in that time. Good for them if it works for them. For me, I cannot imagine sleeping anything less than at least 7 hours a day. Of course, when I'm on the road traveling into another city, it becomes different. But in general, I will never ever compromise on my quality sleep time because that sets the tone of my day. Maybe I'm just jinxed, but
no, I agree with you because I think sleeping is also important and everyone is different, right? If you feel like 7 hours of sleep works best for you and you will feel the best version of yourself during the day, that means you will be more productive. I agree with you. I think the quality of sleep very important, which is directly related with our physical health and mental health.
Absolutely, yes.
What is the most valuable lesson you learned from your career?
One of the best pieces of advice I got from one of my managers when I was fairly young in my career, and I remember the exact words. He said, "You don't need a designation to be a leader. You can lead a set of people while staying within the team without the designation." And to this day, I haven't forgotten it and I live by it. I think that is probably the most impactful advice I've ever got, and it has helped me in good stead in becoming a young leader and to this day in general.
That's really inspiring. Viewers may wonder that I agree with everything you say, but just to let you know that we have not had one single meeting before this podcast and everything is natural and sincere. But again, I will agree with your point because I think titles do not matter. Responsibilities do matter.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership matters. One of the things that I always advise to my students is that do not think about the titles. Focus on getting more responsibilities, which will help you in your journey to success. Especially after COVID times, we need more qualified people in many industries, right? A lot of industries are suffering to find qualified people. So by having a great knowledge, having more responsibilities versus titles, you will be more qualified to be an executive leader one day, right?
For sure.
I can see that you have been very organized, structured and planned, hard worker, go-getter, achiever in your life. But I'm sure there were times in your life that you thought, I could do better. I wish I had the opportunity again, maybe I would do it differently. So my question to you is, what advice would you give it to your younger self? So let's imagine that you are talking to your younger self. I know that sounds a little bit interesting, but what advice would you give it to your younger self?
I think I can answer that question in a very straightforward manner. I would tell my younger self to not be so hard on myself. I've talked about being driven, being ambitious, being overly ambitious at times, and at times, especially towards the beginning of my career, when I set, I wouldn't call them unrealistic goals, but fairly hard to reach goals, to be less of a control freak. I think this perspective I learned with age, with experience, but I hope if a younger me realized this, say 10 years ago or 12 years ago, I wouldn't have beaten myself up at times the way I did. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not reach your goals, especially somebody like me who had a specific timeline for something. I would be slightly discouraged, but I can say this with utmost conviction now. It's all a part of the journey, and in the long run, things always happen for a reason, and then you can always connect the dots. So, yeah, I would like to reiterate,
Don't be hard on yourself, right?
Absolutely.
I think that's
yes.
very important.
Yeah. Be kind to yourself, actually.
And things take time. Sometimes, again, we have obstacles. Yes, we try to move forward, but sometimes we go backward and we go back again. We go back and forth. As long as you know where you're heading to, you will get there, right? Sometimes you will have a wall in front of you. You will go around the wall, you will climb the wall, but you will get it sorted out. Just trust the process, believe in you, and sometimes let things go too, right? Which I'm struggling with. Sometimes I feel like I'm also beating myself up about the processes. I'm not sure if that's one of the disadvantages of always dreaming big. I'm not sure if there is people who dreams big at the same time, they don't beat themselves up. I have not met one so far, but because I can understand that you also were hard to yourself sometimes, and same with me. I think we want things to be perfect, we want things to go well, and if it doesn't go well, sometimes we beat ourselves up. But we need to trust the process and it will get better.
Absolutely, yes.
Now this is the fun part of our episode, unless you think that it's been fun already, but
It's been a lot of fun, Altan. Trust me, it has been.
so let's say you have a superpower.
Oh, wow.
What superpower would you want to have related to technology? What kind of technological superpower you want to have that will help you?
Oh boy. For those who know me, let's just put it this way, technology has not been my strongest suit. I'm an old-fashioned hotelier who does things the old-fashioned way, and some of my colleagues and friends also make a lot of fun of me, but I'm okay with it. Absolutely fine. You can't be a master of all, can you, Altan? But since you asked me this question, honestly, what I found fascinating was when we began this interview, this podcast, just the way you're setting up all the equipment, all this, believe me, feels like rocket science to me. It does. But it also speaks volumes of the efforts that you've put in organizing this. If I could just learn how to put all this equipment together, I think I would be more than happy with it.
So you want to have a technology which can help you to set up your meetings and
Actually, absolutely yes. Why not? I mean, I am one of those people who sometimes will still struggle with changing their background if you suddenly move from a Google Meet to a Zoom meeting. So if I can have maybe not even a superpower, if just the knowledge of doing things without getting a panic attack, I will be more than happy.
right? Technology is good, but sometimes it can make things hard for us, especially these online meetings and everything. And I also teach online classes, and sometimes we stop for a break, right? We take breaks during online classes, and you start doing things at home without noticing that you forgot to mute yourself. So anyone in the class can hear what you're doing. Of course, depending on what you are doing. But so my actually work desk is close to kitchen, so I would probably go and maybe wash dishes or something during breaks, and of course my students will not tell me that I was not muted. So I'm like, teacher, we heard everything what you did. Okay, thank you so much.
We've all had that faux pas, Altan. At least I've had my fair share, so I relate to it, yes.
Let's not talk about standing up during online meetings.
Oh
right?
my goodness, no, not at all.
Okay, I'm not gonna go into that.
Thank you.
So I would like to ask you some quick fire questions.
Oh boy.
You don't need to think about it further. You can just choose one of the another when I give you two options.
Sounds like a plan.
Ready?
Bring it on.
Working from home or office?
Oh, this is one topic I can go on about till the cows come home, but since this is a rapid fire, can I say both, Altan? Can I say, because just with this one, I have a strong opinion on this.
Sure.
I grew up in the industry the old-fashioned way as a hotelier, being in the office 5 days, in fact, at the beginning of my career, 6 days a week. And that's what I was used to. And then over the last few years, things have changed. But
let me add one more option. Working from home or office or both?
hybrid any given day of the week. That gives me the best of both worlds. That's what I currently do, and I enjoy it. Absolutely enjoy it. I love being in the office, seeing my colleagues, seeing people, and then once in a while, I love my time at home, just being in my zone and doing things in my own space.
Next question. In today's world now, there is thing that is called AI, which changes things quite fast in every industry, in everything we do. Even today, before starting our podcast, AI supported me in some ways to set up my meeting. So I would like to ask you, AI assistant or human assistant?
Human assistant who is good with AI.
That's perfect. So we must have AI in our lives now, but we want the human touch.
I don't want anything to do with it directly. If I am in a position where I have a person to go to, if they are happy using AI, whatever floats their boat.
Do you think robots can work in hospitality one day, or we should still have humans doing the hospitality?
Humans.
I agree, humans. I don't want a robot to serve me my meal.
Or check me in at the front desk. Or imagine if I have an issue with my room or something goes wrong, there's a fire alarm.
Sometimes you just wanna go to the restaurant after a work trip. If you're a business traveler, you just wanna say hi to the bartender or people working in the restaurant. I don't want a robot to come and say, hello, like templated response.
Not in this lifetime, I hope.
Saurabh, it has been a great podcast episode. I'm so lucky again and honored to have you as guest speaker of the AD Show podcast. And it's been so much fun for me, and I have learned so much from you. And lastly, I would like to ask you, is there a message that you would like to share with our viewers today before we wrap up?
Thank you, Altan. And before I answer that question, I actually want to take this opportunity to genuinely thank you for inviting me on this podcast. It's been a pleasure, an absolute joy, and so much fun just having these conversations with you. Like you mentioned earlier, I can assure everyone we are meeting after 2 months. We had a conversation 2 months ago. Since then, Altan's been traveling, I've been traveling, and we just decided to meet up today, and here we are. But I've thoroughly enjoyed this, so thank you once again for this opportunity. And yes, I would definitely like to leave a message with our viewers. All I would like to say is, just keep on believing in yourself and let no one ever tell you that you are not capable of doing something. Back yourself, trust your instinct, follow your heart, and believe in the universe. The rest will take care of itself.
Thank you so much, Saurabh.
Thank you, Altan. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for taking the time to watch AD Show podcast. Today I had the great pleasure of having Saurabh Gambhir. Hope you enjoy the episode. If you like what you saw today, please do not forget to like and share this video. And if you would like to see the upcoming episodes of the AD Show with other CEOs and business professionals, please do not forget to subscribe. And I would really appreciate if you can share your comments below about what you think about this episode. Thank you so much. Take care.